Hey guys, welcome to the first edition of WEMS News on Friday, April 28th, 8th grade Corsello edition. I'm Brendan F.
And I'm Patrick R. Today's news will be awesome because we'll bring you news that's not just national, but out of this world.
Today we have stories ranging from school rules about food and drinks to the life of a prisoner living completely by themselves.
Well, I'm super excited for this first edition.
Our first story of the day has to do with the rules around the school about food and drink in classrooms across Emerson. Are we allowed to drink, eat, or chew gum in class? If not, why not?
Take it away, News Team Red.
Do you ever want to eat, drink, or chew gum in class?
Girls, there's no chewing gum in school.
Sorry, Sizzles. How would changing food and drink regulations at Emerson Middle School affect students? Chewing gum is proven to help students focus and to maintain optimum energy. Students must eat healthy food every 3 hours. Kids are put under a lot of stress throughout school days, and they need to keep their bodies fueled with the proper nutrition and hydration. Eating 5 to 7 times per day is the best method to keep brains and muscles fueled, the metabolism moving, and blood levels constant. The main reason that students aren't allowed to eat and chew gum in class is because teachers think that the food will be all over the school and stuck under the desks. Also, the smell of the food and the noise of the wrappers may distract other students in class. Students are sometimes able to bring drinks in class, but most of the time they have to get a drink at the water fountain. We interviewed Emerson Middle School's principal, Dr. Morrison, and asked him some questions and got his thoughts on our school's food and drink regulations.
Hi.
Hello.
Why do you think teachers are allowed to eat in class but students aren't? Like during class, like what's going on?
Well, you know what? That's an interesting question. There are times where teachers teach for long periods of time during the school day where they go and teach for hours together. But I would say if they're eating in front of the class, then yeah, I think that students should have the opportunity to do the same.
Cool. All right. And have you ever considered allowing students to bring gum to class, like chew gum while they're with you?
Now that's a big question. Now that's the question that I've been in education for almost 30 years. And since I was in my first year, kids always wanted to chew gum in class. In fact, when I was the assistant principal at Gemini Junior High, we tried it for a day, allowing kids to have gum. We found more gum on the floor, in the drinking fountains, on the desks, in places that it was disgusting. And so, we give it a try, but students just can't seem to handle that responsibility. Cool. All right. Thank you, guys. Pleasure.
Next, we surveyed the 8th grade students to see their opinions on our school's food and drink regulations. If you look at the pie chart, it shows that 69.3% of the students said that they concentrate better in class while chewing gum. 12% said they don't, and 13.3% said maybe, and 5.3% said no.
That concludes our segment on how schools' food and drink regulations affect students. If schools allow children to chew gum, then it is proven for children to focus more in class, but it may make messes. If students are able to have a water bottle in class, their bodies will be fueled throughout the day, but it may be hazardous. Lastly, if students are allowed to eat in class, they will have more energy and be more awake throughout the day, but the smells and noises may distract some.
That was some interesting information on school rules about food.
I agree. However, rules aren't going to matter if we all die from a bad environment.
But the EPA takes care of that, right?
Yeah, the EPA should, but I heard that there were some cuts going on done by President Trump. Take it away, News Team Purple.
We're going to protect the family farm, and we are going to end the EPA intrusion into your lives.
Donald Trump believes EPA restrictions kill jobs and do not allow the economy to grow. He plans to cut down these regulations and the government funding that the EPA receives. So how will Trump's proposed EPA budget cuts affect the U.S. and the world? The EPA is the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. The agency's purpose is to ensure that Americans are protected from risks to their health and the environment by enforcing laws that concern these areas. Trump has already signed an executive order that removes 6 of Barack Obama's actions aimed at fighting climate change. Trump wants to cut $2.6 billion from the EPA's $8.2 billion annual budget. This is a proposed decrease of about 31%. The cuts from the budget will be transferred to fund the U.S. military. Nearly half of the EPA's budget goes into grants for state environmental programs, nonprofits, and schools. The money is used for scientific studies, community cleanups, and enforcement of environment-related laws. Companies that rely on fossil fuels or coal will be able to bring in higher profits, as the EPA will not be able to enforce its regulations as strictly. This means that companies will be able to get away with cheaper but harmful production methods. Less EPA regulations could also lead to dramatic effects on our animal populations and bodies of water.
I'm here in front of EPA's headquarters, where the EPA leaders and the Trump administration have clashed over Donald Trump's proposed budget cuts. If these budget cuts go through, animals and bodies of water will be greatly affected. The Trump administration has sought to end EPA regulations which reduce water pollution. This could harm freshwater animals, many of which are already endangered. The EPA has set standards to ensure that drinking water for humans is free from chemicals and harmful organisms. The EPA will not be able to enforce its regulations as closely, which could lead to unsafe drinking water, more air and water pollution, and can lead to endangered animals to extinction.
We interviewed Mr. Keating, a local science teacher, to hear his thoughts and opinions on the topic.
I guess what I want people to know in general about the environment is that the decisions we make, like today, affect the future.
The EPA plays an important role in keeping our environment clean and safe for citizens, but President Trump also believes that its restrictions place burdens on the economy. Budget cuts to the EPA could hurt the environment and progress we have begun to make in fighting climate change, but give more freedom to corporations who struggle under strict EPA regulations.
If you could say one thing to Donald Trump about this entire topic, what would it be?
I would say, Mr. Trump, you're not a scientist and you don't seem to understand science, so I would recommend listening to scientists.
Why would President Trump do that?
I have no clue, but thinking about all the environmental cuts makes me depressed.
Speaking of depression, I would be depressed if I was alone for a long period of time. I wonder what it would be like for a prisoner living alone in solitary confinement.
Weird. Let's let News Team Orange talk about that for a while.
Good afternoon. We'll be doing our segment on solitary confinement and trying to answer what is the impact of putting prisoners in solitary confinement and why should they be put in it. Solitary confinement is locking prisoners away in a room by themselves, either as a punishment or for other reasons. They have no contact to other people while they're in solitary confinement. However, the controversy over this topic is that many people believe that the harsh treatment of solitary goes over with human rights. Also, if they can't sentence someone to death, they might put them in solitary confinement to make the punishment more severe. Now let's take a look at our field report on solitary confinement.
Solitary confinement is the isolation of a prisoner in a separate cell as a punishment. According to solitarywatch.com, prison guards generally put prisoners in solitary confinement that they don't want to deal with. They could also put someone in there to protect them from gangs and other types of violence. They sometimes beat the prisoners with nightsticks along with using stun guns and grenades. They also use things like tear gas or rubber bullet grenades. They also use electric chairs and restraint chairs to torture the prisoners. The main debate with solitary confinement is that it can be too harsh and that it happens to go against human rights. It can escalate to memory loss and many hallucinations. Solitary confinement also may lead to suicidal thoughts or actions. It is also one of the main reasons to driving someone to insanity. It happened in nearly every prison and has happened for over centuries. Calculations created by reporters from Belleville News Democrat found that it costs $92,000 to hold a prisoner in solitary confinement in Illinois. That cost is 2 to 3 times higher than the cost of keeping a prisoner at the state's other maximum security prisons. There's a man named Thomas Silverstein that has not been in contact with any humans in 32 years.
Now let's take a look at some survey results regarding solitary confinement. We surveyed the 8th grade on the subject of solitary confinement, and here are the results. We first asked, do you think that solitary confinement is a fair punishment to use on prisoners? Our answers were split, with 55.9% saying yes and 44.1% saying no. We then asked them, do you think that prisons should use solitary confinement? We got pretty split answers again for this question, with 40% saying no and 44.8% saying yes. and 15.2 replying with other answers. For the next question, we asked, do you think solitary confinement has a positive influence on prisoners? We got similar results again with 57.2% saying yes and 27.6% saying no, and 15.2% replying with other answers. Finally, we asked them on a scale from 1 to 10, how strongly do they agree or disagree with solitary confinement? The results are shown here.
So all in all, solitary confinement can be too harsh for what it's trying to accomplish. It can help some prisoners in some cases. It can also help the wardens and prison guards manage the prisoners. Now you can make your decision if solitary confinement should be used. If you feel like solitary confinement is a problem for people and needs to be fixed, visit aclu.org for advocacy resources.
Wow. Solitary confinement sure is some sad stuff.
Yeah, it makes me a little lonely just thinking about it.
Speaking of lonely, I wonder what it would be like to live on the lonely planet, Mars.
Same, but I think New Scheme Green could tell us a little bit more about the moon, Mars, and outer space in general.
Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong were the first astronauts to go to the moon during the Apollo 11 mission. But Buzz Aldrin doesn't want to be remembered for just kicking around moon dust. He has a huge plan for humans to travel to Mars. However, how likely is it that humans will be on Mars during our lifetime?
Now let's join Jonathan and Tom to learn more about Buzz Aldrin and his plan.
Hello. Today we are reporting to you from the Apollo 11 launch pad. We are going to be talking to you about Buzz Aldrin's plan to live on Mars, as well as the plan's benefits and downsides.
Buzz Aldrin wants humans to be on Mars by the year 2039. He would also like Mars to be colonized and have a similar settlement to the Pilgrims when they came to America.
Buzz Aldrin's plan is to have humans start testing to leave to Mars on cyclers. Cyclers are ships that leave temporarily and then come back to Earth.
The astronauts will travel in cyclers for about 6 months to get there, but they cannot make one trip without refueling. The moon will be used as a pit stop to refuel. The moon contains water ice that is made up of oxygen and hydrogen, which can be used for fuel.
His plan includes getting 18 people to the Red Planet every 2 years until there are 150 people permanently residing on Mars. Cyclers would be a cheap way to get to Mars. The astronauts on Mars have to stay there for at least a year and a half. They can leave after that if they want to. Their journey is also 6 months long.
But Buzz Aldrin isn't the only one who has a plan to go to Mars. President Donald Trump has recently signed a bill that will fund NASA. The funding will give NASA $19.5 billion to go towards their project to go to Mars that they have been working on for a while. Many people seem pretty confident on the space travel plan.
But how will this affect our bodies? The radiation on Mars will kill 5% of cells. This radiation could also lead to cancer. Although this is a serious risk, there has been a new breakthrough that can lead to anti-aging drugs. This type of medicine can help astronauts survive trips to Mars, and they could be on the market in 3 to 5 years.
Here's Jonathan with Miss Beatty to learn more about the hazards of living on Mars.
I think that solar radiation is going to be a serious problem. I know that they have been looking at lava tubes in Iceland and in California as possible places to practice building things because there are lava tubes on Mars. That would kind of alleviate some of the solar radiation problem they're going to be facing. The solar wind is going to be more difficult to deal with because their atmosphere is thinner. Making sure they have a good way to make oxygen and to recycle carbon dioxide that they generate to make more oxygen is going to be, that's just an engineering problem. And the same thing with water. They've proven that there's underground sources of water. I don't know how extensive that is, and so they're going to need to make sure that they have ways to generate water and recycle it. So I think those are going to be difficult too.
Although there are a few downsides, if everything goes according to plan, this mission will kick off on the 70th anniversary of the Apollo 11 mission, July 20th, 2019.
It would be weird to live on Mars, wouldn't it?
Wait, what? Sorry, I was spacing out.
Anyway, we should be getting on our Milky Way.
Yeah, but all these news stories were out of this world.
True, they really rocketed it.
Thanks for tuning in. You're all stars, and it feels like a light year since we've started today. See you next time on WEMS News.